Human Resources Committee workshop for Wednesday, April 15th, 2020 will come to order. Members present are myself, the chairman, Mr. Harvey, Mr. Wayne, and Chuck Cook, Mr. Cook. Okay, so we'll start off with the approval item, which is the minutes from our last meeting on 5 March. As soon as commission members that were present at the meeting have read through them and have no changes, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, our minutes were given to us ahead of time, so I offer a motion that the minutes be approved as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Minutes are approved. Okay, we'll move to the first discussion item, which is self-funded health care.
All right, just, okay. Try not to move anything. Good morning. Hope everyone is well. I see that we have a few commissioners missing today, so the discussion is going to lead us into some action items of what to do next. I'm Katina Tyndall, if you don't know. We saw each other last month and may see each other again this month. We have a few things to go over. We have 4 slides. We could speak for hours about the details of self-funding and the inner workings. The information that I'll go over today is to try to hit the highlights, but that's not to diminish any information that we want to provide. So if we need to have an additional work session, if commissioners would like to call me directly, if we need to have meetings, if you want to see something by email, a different sort of spreadsheet or any other information, please just let me know. I'm going to run through everything and then we will stop and backtrack for any questions. That way I fall into the timeline. Yesterday I was fortunate enough to speak with staff leadership and we timed it. I think it went to 58 minutes and that was with Mr. Burrows giving me 30. So I'm going to do my best to do as he asked and cut that in half. All right. So we've provided 4 slides today, and at the end of the meeting, we're going to be talking about a few things. One, we're going to be asking you for the decision to be made on adding some of the optional benefits. Most of the optional benefits are benefits that the plan currently has embedded. They're add-on benefits, and then also something called a terminal liability protection rider, and we'll talk about that. So we'll need a decision on which self-funded plan and some additional benefits. Joint water and sewer may also have to pass a resolution or a vote to set up the fund and fund the fund. In addition, the employees will have to be offered open enrollment all over again because we're starting a new plan year July 1st. All of this is assuming that we move forward with the self-funded plan. So in order to have that sort of timeline to set up the administration account, meet with the employees or set up anything that they need in advance, we are probably looking at a decision to be made about 60 days in advance, which puts us by the end of this month. If we had to do it in 45, we could, but what we would shorten is just the time for the employees to decide. That's not a really big issue because we're not changing the plan, we're changing the back office way that the claims are paid. Okay, so at the end of this session, we'll be asking for your consideration on the timeline and what we can and cannot do in the next 30 days. So I just wanted to go over a few very brief updates. Every meeting that we have, the commissioners will ask for certain things or ask questions, and at our next meeting, I answer those questions. If you would ever like those answers more quickly, I can have them to you the same day by email, or I can just present those answers at the next meeting. It's totally up to you, so if you'll just let me know what you'd like. So Commissioner Neal, you asked me to speak to the county about what they're currently doing with wellness and so on and so forth. I spoke to Aura that same week, and the Glynn County Wellness Plan is not mandatory, but what they do is they offer such a discount if you go through the wellness plan that they have 98% participation. So again, they created a reward system that employees do seem to enjoy at 98%. and the rates reflect that. So that is something that we could consider doing. They do test for tobacco, and they test every employee every year, regardless of whether they use tobacco or don't use tobacco. Everyone gets tested, and any adult dependent over 18 is also tested. So they just automatically test for that. The testing does have a fee of about $40 to $60 a test, so that is something you would have to think about from a budget standpoint. But that is something that they do, and I do have those rates, and we can discuss that further maybe when we get into the tobacco. BMI is not charged. So if you have a high BMI at Glynn County, it's a great place to be because there's no reward or discount for that. Commissioner Duncan wanted to talk about the level funding. So there's something between self-funding and fully funding, and it's called level funding. And that means that if you have a good claims year, they're going to split and give you a little rebate based on your claims. If we decided to quote that, we could not quote it until March of next year. So that is not something we could just move into this year. We'd have to wait until next year, stay level funded where we are. Because of course, if we go self-funded, it is a 3 to 5 year commitment. It's not a year-to-year thing. Let's see, we had a few other things which we can go over. Commissioner Elliott, you wanted to know what the enrollment differences were between 2019 and 20, and I did give you a copy of that. I have additional copies if any of the commissioners would like to see what that looked like. Okay, moving on to the self-funded, and we're just gonna, Janice, let me just X out. There. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so the first thing, okay, gotcha, yes ma'am. So the first thing that we'll talk about is just the strategy of what we've been doing so far. In the past couple of years, we've raised deductibles, out-of-pockets, increased the employer and employee cost. We've changed the benefits. We've added a health reimbursement account to lower the deductible and out-of-pocket costs for the employees. We're implementing a new wellness program, which is on the back burner right now until we have a different situation in our country, and the hospital is a bit overwhelmed, but we are still assessing that and waiting until the time. Actually, we would have had that in the past couple of weeks had all this not occurred. And we are considering a discount for employees to not use tobacco and for normal BMI. The long-term strategies are going to be considering the alternate funding, maybe looking at the performance funding, but most likely not, enhancing the wellness, giving incentives for the wellness, possible discounts, implementing benchmarks for healthy lifestyle through those incentives and discounts, and creating a culture of an invested and engaged workforce. So just to let you know, in the past couple of years, we've tried lots of different tricks and things to lower the cost, and that's where we end up in a self-funding place where we say, wait a minute, yeah, we've had a few bad claims years, so maybe we understand the insurance company lost money, but overall, when we really look at what we could save, there's a little more reward than risk, so maybe let's look at this self-funding thing, and that's where we are today. What is the difference in self-funding and fully funding? Well, right now, all you have to do is pay the bill. In self-funding, you pay the claims, so it's a really big difference. You're always going to have a cost for administration, and you're always going to have a cost for reinsurance, but past that, you're just going to pay the claims. Once your claims hit a certain level, then the insurance company picks it up from there, so you know what your possible risk may be. Although, in self-funding, there's always on the other side of what the insurance company could pay, and that could be limitless, and we'll go over that as well. Any questions yet?
Yeah. On the BMI, normal BMI, individuals can be overweight and outside the BMI, but they generally don't have any health problems. If they hit the obese area, then there are health problems. Is that a correct statement?
BMI and obesity kind of go together. If you have a high BMI, you are considered medically obese. So I don't think there would ever be a time you would have a high BMI and still not be overweight. The county does not discount for having normal height and weight because those are some pretty astringent numbers in today's culture, but you can create anything you want. It's your plan.
My issue is this: we have a lot of people that are obese. And I don't think having them within a year get to a BMI is realistic. I don't think they'll ever get there. But if they get to where they're defined as overweight, which is I didn't realize there were different categories till I started looking at what the doctor says on mine. Because I'm considered overweight, not, I'm not within the range I'm supposed to be, but I'm not very far out of it, so
I see
he
what you mean.
classifies me as overweight.
Overweight and obesity is beyond that, I see.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So a good, better, best.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And what I think that is best achievable is that they're not obese. And, I don't know how much that would affect everything, but
Well, it would depend. If the commission felt that it was valuable to weigh employees every year at a certain period of time and say, if you fall within this range, we will charge you this amount. If you don't fall in this range, we'll charge you a different amount. You can really create it any way you want. Is there a value in being overweight and not obese? It is to the person on scale. Other than that, it's probably better that everybody's in the normal range.
the goal is for you to
Yes.
drag it on down to where you hit the range of the BMI. But that's why I said, look at it and maybe have a staggered system, a couple of levels to encourage them, you have a guy that's got 50 pounds overweight, that's really hard to drop unless you're
Right.
sick.
Well, but he's in a lot better health if he loses 20 pounds and he's only 30 pounds overweight.
That's what I'm kind
Right.
of going now.
Yeah, so,
So you could set up some benchmarks that just say, even if you are 250 pounds and your ideal weight is 180, if you lose a certain percentage over a certain time, you could be discounted. You just have to ask yourself what the appetite is for the staff and everyone else to monitor that and how you would do it. You might make those benchmarks a little more broad, or you might do something outside of that and maybe offer some sort of incentives instead of, you can make it however you want. But yes, there is that value in anyone just taking that action. For instance, and I'll jump ahead, the smoking cessation plans with Glynn County, you don't actually have to quit smoking to get the discount. You just have to go through their online virtual program because they're trying to get you to forward think about your health and what you can and cannot do. So, but they're not going to charge you if you've taken that class.
Okay.
Okay?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Has there ever been consideration of offering some sort of a gym discount for employees?
Well, we have looked into that before. We have a couple of gyms that are only $10 a month, and when we've spoken to those places, because it's a promotion, they won't discount it when it's so small. Some of the larger gyms do run promotions like that, and that is their special to the community. Gyms like St. Simon's, they may offer a small discount, but we haven't had very many people come to us about that, because we do have one gym that's in the mall area that's around $10 a month.
Right.
And there's no fee.
I can confirm that.
Yes, and there's no fee to cancel or sign up, so
Right.
we found that there are limits on them giving a discount.
I was asking because obviously that would also be something useful in terms of people's wellness and perhaps assisting people in losing weight
Yes.
and being healthier and lowering the health costs if we do
Yes.
go to a self-funded plan.
And I think that when we go into the wellness discussion and start talking about what we want to do in the future, those are all going to be helpful things that we can move towards. Even if we just list those places and say, here's how much it is, so they understand. Maybe someone doesn't want to make a call and figure out who they should call or what they can. Maybe we can look into something like that. That would make it easier for them to access.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. All right, going into the pros and cons, and I'm going to run through these quickly. Again, I can put all this together and email it to you, but I
do
understand.
that for me, please.
Yes.
Might as well send it to everybody, please.
I will be happy to. All right, so the fully insured plan, which is what you have now, there's very low risk. Purchasing from an insurance company, you pay the bill, no balance bills. Predictable budget, not volatile. Employers know the cost in advance, as high as it is. Joint water and sewer is not responsible for any run-out claims. Any claims received after 12 months are still going to be covered Even if the policy cancels, the carrier assumes all the risk, but joint water has little control and premium costs may be higher. The potential low renewals are based on low claims, so we can get a 0% reduction, 0% flat renewal or even a reduction. When you go to self-funded, you're going to see an increase every year, and I'll explain why. Remember, you're the insurance company, so you're paying the claims. So flat renewals are only available in the fully insured, where they say, well, we made so much money off of them, we can give them a 0% renewal and still make money. So yeah, we'll give you that, renew with us. But on a self-funded, you're the insurance company, so you sort of create your own renewals in that regard.
However, we also have to try to make sure our people are more healthy so we could get the claims down, so we don't pay
Yes, sir.
more money out in claims.
Yes, sir. And before, it always mattered, but it didn't matter quite as much because the insurance company was taking the hit. Yes, sir. But now, as you know, having a self-funded plan, you do have to manage that, and that's where these discussions are coming from. Yes, sir. All right, and so the costs are on the fully funded that you have now. The cost is higher. There's no rebate or return of premium with a good claims year. Lack of flexibility on plan design. The carrier uses past claims experience to determine future rates. Premium payments do not reflect real-time changes. Administration and insurance profit costs are higher with a fully funded. Any questions on your current plan before we go to the self-funded? Okay, so on the self-funded, the pros, there's a higher risk but a much greater potential for reward and cost savings. Joint water and sewer pays all of the claims up to the stop-loss period. In a bad claims year, joint water and sewer would pay more if they were fully insured, and in a good claims year, joint water and sewer experiences immediate savings by lowering the cost. So remember, you're not going to get a rebate or a reduction. You're just going to have paid less in claims. So when you add up what you spent on a self-funded plan versus what you spent on the premiums of a fully funded plan, there should be a savings there. But it's not necessarily the cost of insurance that goes down every year. It will go up. It's the amount of claims that you paid.
Yeah, but if we, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'll wait until you finish.
Okay. All right. So there are pharmacy rebates. So we're not all surprised that the insurance companies get a kickback from the from the pharmacy companies based on certain prescriptions that are filled. On a self-funded plan, we will get to split that savings. So joint water and sewer will get 80% of those savings. The insurance company will get 20% of the savings. That 20% that the insurance company gets is part of the profit of putting in a self-insured plan. Of course, my next question is, where do we need to be to get 100% of the savings? And they said, you'll never be at 100%, but after a couple of years, we can negotiate and get up to as much as 90%. So those rebates are available, and in addition, that would be rebates that are on top of the savings not paid in claims. The renewals or administration, it will go up annually. Renewals for stop loss are about 25 to 30 the second year. So the reason for that is, and this is a little tricky, but it's called the maturing period. So when you are paying claims in the first 12 months of a contract, we all know if we go to the doctor today, by the time the bill hits the insurance company, it's 30, 60, 90 days. So when we start this, let's just say July 1st, and we're looking at this May 1st of next year, we are only going to be looking at about 9 months of claims because those other months haven't come in. So when you look and you're comparing what you paid a year ago and what you're paying in 9 months of claims, it looks like you saved $900,000, but it's because those last 90 days of claims have not come in. So the rate that you receive for the first year of self-funding is always going to be lower. The second year is going to be a full 12 months of claims, which means your savings is going to go down and you're going to see a 25 to 30% in the reinsurance. The reinsurance is in the $250 to $450 range, unlike your premiums. Now they're in the $700 to $1,800 range. So that percentage on top of that isn't that much more. And I have information to show you that savings will be found in the lower paid claims versus the highly fully funded plan, and the employer is able to reduce the employee or employer portion. So right now, you may want to keep deductions exactly like they are for July 1st. Don't make a change. Don't add more. Don't take away more. And let's see how the year runs. If things go very well, you'll have the chance to reduce the cost for the employee or increase the cost for the employee. But if you keep everything exactly the same, they're not going to see any difference. The cons of a self-insured plan are we went to other reinsurers and had no other offers. United Healthcare, our current carrier, is the only carrier that offered us a reinsurance option because we do have some high claims. And if those high claims hit, we could end up in a situation where we spend more than we did on the fully funded. So at least we know we're in the right place, I'll just say. Again, it's a 3 to 5 year commitment. The employer assumes all the risk, with the stop loss insurance providing financial protection against catastrophic claims. The first year, as we said, of the claims are going to be immature. Cash flow, you're going to have money coming in and out, or out, no in, out of that account to pay claims every single week, and a separate fund has to be set up and funded, which we talked about in our action items. And probably the toughest thing is we don't know what claims are going to look like. If COVID-19 ends up going away miraculously at the end of the month, and we don't have any further issues in this country, we'll be fine. But if we have another outbreak, if it gets worse, and people end up in the hospital, we've just started a self-funded plan as of July 1st, so we could have a balloon of claims. In addition, anyone who had surgery scheduled that wasn't life-threatening has had that deferred to another time in the year. So we are probably going to have a good number of people have surgeries after July 1st. So we could have claims that are unexpectedly a little bit higher and undetermined. We don't know what the future is going to hold. So in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to self-funding, and we're rolling the dice a little bit there. But that's just one of the things that we do have to think about.
With that being said, even if we had a good claims year this year with the fully funded plan, the health insurance people are taking a bath right now with the pandemic, so we're probably going to get a massive increase next year regardless, right?
He's absolutely right, and they call it trend. Trend just means it cost us too much and we have dividends to pay.
Regardless of what our claims are.
Regardless, oh, your claims are on top of that number.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right.
And you'll always see trend still in insurance, but it'll just be the reinsurance, so it'll be a much smaller number. Because all you're paying for now is how much does it cost United Healthcare to run this self-funded plan for you, do all the claims and take care of all the business, and then how much for the reinsurance part that we pay over a certain amount. That in between joint water pays and saves as well. Because remember, they always put a little meat on the bone just in case claims are bad. Insurance companies, so I went back and forth and I finally said, okay, what do we have to do to where the group always wins? And he said, well, that's never going to happen. So there is no scenario that we can always win. We just have to decide where are we most likely to win. All right, and then I also have terms and sort of a glossary of self-funded things, and I can, since we're sending out an email, I'll just prepare something that has all this detail, if that's okay, and I'll go over all of those.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So you feel comfortable with United Healthcare as being the third-party administrator for a self-funded plan?
Yes, very much so.
All right. I mean, they're aggressive about, reviewing claims, making sure that they were not over the customary charge, and hospital bills. So that would be one of the things that I would be concerned about. I just was doing a little research the other day, and I said the average hospital bill is 82 pages long. And so, I mean, if you have a company that's just going to say, well, we'll just knock 40% off and send them the money, I think we would need a company that would actually review the bill, actually do an actual review of the bill and make sure that we're not paying any more money than we have to do. So if you're comfortable with United Healthcare, I know they have a good reputation, having been on that plan in right now, actually. So I'm happy with it. So if you're, and there's no other option really at this point, right?
Well, there's not, but I'd still choose United Healthcare because they are probably the most aggressive company that we work with. As a matter of fact, Daphne and I have to wrestle them like an alligator on a lot of things. So on the back office side, the things they don't want to pay for are astonishing. So that's our job to take care of, so you don't get to see so much of that. But yes, they scrutinize, they pre-certify, they over-pre-certify, and as part of the contract, they even have a clause that says if someone goes out of network, because, just to sort of a sidebar conversation, there are the radiology group at the hospital and the imaging group at the hospital, same thing, two different companies, are not in network with United Healthcare and not in network with most insurance companies, although they've tried. We just got the anesthesiologist in network this past year working with the leadership at the health system, but because they are, yes, they have a captive contract, but the health system cannot make them be in network, and they make more money if they're not. So United Healthcare says if you go to someone that is out of network, or use someone that's out of network, but your provider and your doctor was in network, we will go to bat and reduce that claim for you working directly with the doctor. But guess what? We're charging you 35% of what is paid as a fee for doing so. So they make money when they save money, which helps us.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go to the first slide. And you have 4 slides, and I think we have it. Is that's not on the screen. Do I just hit this button?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. I made it as big as I could, and I'm embarrassed.
We have a copy. We're fine.
Oh, I'm so glad. Okay. Thank you. This is not an eye test. So at the top, I just wanted you to see at the top, number 1, that's the premium versus claims. This is 2018 through 2019. So that is a true plan year on number 1. On number 2, because our renewal was just March 1st, we don't have 12 whole months. So what I used there was just a full 12 months so we could get an idea of what have we been paying. So you'll see in 2018 to 2019, which was the first year that we were with United Healthcare, the premium paid was around $2.2 million. That's the second column on the, or third column on the top chart. And then all the way to the right, the total payments, which includes medical payments, pharmacy payments, was $2.398868. So we had 106% loss ratio on the group. Claims were very, very high. So 2.2 was paid in premium, almost 2.4 was paid out in claims. That would have been a tough year if we had been self-insured. We would have ended up spending money if we were self-insured that year. But then drop down and look at number 2 and look at the past 12 months. If we just look at that, we can see that the total payments on claims went from almost 2.4 million down to 1.6 million. Well, now we're talking, because the premium is going to make all the difference there. In a good claims year, we may spend $2.2 million, almost 2.3 in premium, but if the total payments out was only 1.6, then that difference minus all of the fees put in and put out would have been about a $600,000 savings to joint water and sewer. So in a good claims year, we would make some money. In a bad claims year, we would lose money. Interestingly enough, we would have lost a lot less than we could gain, which is a lot more. So we could have made 600, we could have lost around 150. So when we're looking at the modeling of what would it look like if we had been with self-funded, this is what that model looks like. We would have had a poor year and a good year.
I have another question.
Yes.
Typically, in a situation with self-funded, does the organization put in the money for monthly to pay out the premiums, or is it all in one lump sum
It's weekly.
weekly?
The claims are drafted weekly. That way the
No, I'm
claims.
saying the organization, though, when it puts money into the account, they don't put, they don't put the full amount for the year in at one time.
You can choose however you would like to. They have,
I think we would probably fund the account for the year
Fully,
and then,
right,
work through it that way.
and just take the money out as, yes, that's what I
And it's
was
just
wondering
debited,
how.
and then there's a,
You want to establish a healthcare reserve,
Exactly, yeah, that's why I was wondering, yeah,
work it that way.
right. Is that, is that what?
yeah, LaDonna's running out of ink.
No, I mean, we could certainly do that. We, for example, last year transferred $1 million at the end of the year into the R&R budget. We could have transferred that to kick off the healthcare reserve,
Okay.
and then fund it like we currently do. Instead of paying United Healthcare, we could pay ourselves into that account so that we wouldn't get
Do it
behind.
monthly so that
Do
we
it
don't
monthly
take
so
a
we continue to
heavy
do it.
Front end hit.
Right.
Right.
Put some money to seed it, but,
Right.
and then feed it monthly like
I
that.
would
And,
think that would be a more evenly dispersed.
and then if
I would
we,
have to seed it to start it, but
Yeah,
and then if we had a good claims year, this, say, $600,000 savings, we could likely leave that money in there to buffer against other bad
to
claims
create
years.
a reserve
Right.
for a bad year,
Reserve and a reserve.
yeah.
And any money that United Healthcare took out of that account to overpay or for that seed money does come back with interest, just in case you wanted to know. So if they ever take an amount that's over, if there are refunds or any of that initial money, that does come back with interest. But most employers do just seed the plan, and then monthly they put that money in. They
Okay.
usually don't have the funds to just
right,
fund
to
it
dump the whole
annually.
thing in at one time, sure.
But that's however you like.
Okay.
All right, any questions on page one before
One
we move
question,
on? Yes,
Tina.
sir.
Have you checked out over, let's say, a 5-year period, how claims have been trending for JWSC, so we can decide as to how much that we would want to fund our claim budget?
I can send that to you, just the 5 years.
Yeah, because that way we need to figure out
And send that to
how,
all of us.
how much we're gonna fund this budget for anyhow. So we have at least a roundabout an average, or so we can say, well, claims are trending, over a 5-year period has been $600,000, $2 million or whatever it is. So we'll know that, okay, we need to fund this right here at this level.
Because you will have to decide, do you want a 50,000, 75,000, or 100,000 individual stop-loss number?
Exactly, we got to do
Yes.
that, you're right. Okay. All right, thanks.
Yes, I absolutely will do that. And again, anything that you might want to see, I do have some additional things, but I'm more excited about what you tell me you want, and then I can just get it to you this week, and that'll help and simplify, and it'll be a lot bigger than this. Yes. Okay, any other questions on this first slide?
I do have another question.
Yes.
Would the utility just make the determination to go ahead and plan to fund it at the full $2.2 million for the year? You would do that as an initial thing? In
I
other
think
words,
you'll probably have a separate resolution or vote on
Right.
when to fund and how to fund, and there'll probably be a couple of additional things to
Yeah.
discuss at that time, but yes, you could.
yeah, I mean, it seems that realistic to just fund it fully like that over the course of the year so that we're in a good position going into the first year of this.
I would say at least the first year you want to do that, and
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 years until you get some
Right.
reserve built up there.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right, anyone else? All right, second little teeny tiny slide.
Even smaller.
Yes. All right, so this top part, under Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3, these are just the 3 plans that you currently offer the employees. What United Healthcare did is they matched the benefits and kept the same group number and the same ID number, so when employees go to the doctor, they still have United Healthcare. It's the same ID number, it's the same group number. We're not gonna have this huge disruption of employees going to the doctor and everything's changed and they just had renewal March 1. But they will receive a new ID card because the self-funded side and the fully funded side looks a little different, so they will have ID cards. Again, if we can work in that 60-day timeline, we'll have plenty of time for employees to make choices and those ID cards to be in hand by the 1st. For the employees, what we're trying to do is create a seamless process that only the administrative side of Joint Water will see. The employees will see no difference but a new ID card and a new opportunity. Again, United Healthcare is the third-party administrator and their parent company is the reinsurer. So the first block that you're looking at just shows the benefits of the 3 plans that you offer. Then we get into the administrative fee detail that you'll see on the second block of boxes, and you'll see that the fee, the administrative fee, is $126.70. So that's the first number that the insurance company is going to charge you, and that is for administration. How much is United Healthcare going to charge to just administer the plan for everyone? $126.70 per employee per month. However, that does not include or that includes all of the family members. It is not per family member. So if I have a full family, I'm still only 126. All of the numbers are based on the 123 employees, not the full number. So we have 123 employees, but 251 participants. So the amount is based on 123, not 251. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. What they're doing is they're saying, if you stay with United Healthcare, we will guarantee you that your administrative cost on year 1 will be $126.70. Will go from $126 to $128.77 year 2, and from $128.77 to $130.92. So you can see that there is a little bit of an increase, but now we know what those administrative costs would be for 3 years in a row. So we don't have to worry of how much is the administration going to go up.
Now,
Okay.
one thing, while we're on this, at the top, it says that we can't do an HRA if we go self-funded, which is something we just set up for the current March 1 renewal. We can do an HSA, but the HRA for the deductibles for the employees on the $1,500 and $3,500, we were going to pay half back.
Where does that say?
The
Just where it
bottom of the
says-
top box. Right underneath Choice Plus. Fifth line down under,
Page 2.
on page 2.
Plan 1 and Plan 2.
Okay, oh, where it just says no?
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, that just means you don't have one, but that just means that they're not administering it for you.
Okay.
I talked to you, I'm so sorry. Yes, United Healthcare, I spoke to them about it. First of all, they don't really even know how to do it, and their charge was $30,000 to just have a setup for that. So they will not be providing that. But yes, you can continue with the HRA. I apologize. Okay. So those are the administrative costs. Now we have to get to the optional cost. So there are a couple of things that you have to consider. Again, the fully insured plans include a lot of bells and whistles like the Quit for Life smoking cessation, real appeal weight loss, the EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Program, and enhanced behavioral health solutions. The first thing that we'll talk about, though, is something called terminal liability coverage. So, in a self-funded contract, claims are paid based on your plan year. So in the 12 months that you have your plan, if you were to cancel the plan July 1st of next year, then the insurance company is going to make you pay for any claims received after July 1st of 2021. Terminal liability coverage says we will extend our claims paid period for 90 days past July 1st if you cancel the first year. So let's just say that Joint Water, we go through all of this and we get the claims next year and they're terrible. And Joint Water takes a bath and we say, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to go back to fully funded for any reason. Any claims received after July 1st are 100% on Joint Water and Sewer to pay. Well, that could be the bulk of the claims depending on what's going on that year. But if you purchase terminal liability, again, you get 90 additional days, which 90 days is about when medical bills would come in. Although we've all had a medical bill that came in 8 months after we saw a doctor that we never actually saw. So that can happen as well. And in self-funding, you do take that risk. However, if you renew with United Healthcare every year, then it just rolls over and you don't ever have to worry about providing terminal liability. But if there's any possibility that you would not keep it past July 1st of next year, then I would seriously consider terminal liability coverage. But you can see that it's significant. For the aggregate stop loss, it's $4.83 an employee, and the individual stop loss is the highest at $52.78, and that's for the 100,000 plan. In these three columns in this box, you'll see the 100,000, 75,000, and 50,000. That is the individual deductible or stop loss for the plan. So joint water and sewer is going to pay the first 100,000, the first 75,000, or the first 50,000 on every employee until you meet a certain aggregate number, which we'll go over. So when you're looking at the 175 and 50, there is a little difference in the cost on what the terminal liability coverage is. And choosing that terminal liability is probably going to be the biggest decision to make. So do you want to talk about that any further? Does anybody have any questions on how that works? It's just a 90-day additional protection for claims at the end of the contract if you decided to exit self-funding in the after the 12-month period. But if you're committed that that's not going to happen, you're going to renew, whether it is good or bad, then the terminal liability is not necessary.
Okay, I think that the discussion on this probably needs to occur once we make a decision as to whether we're gonna go self-funding or stay with a plan.
Okay?
I think this would feed into whether we choose self-funding.
Okay. All right. And so and then the pieces underneath that you'll see in the blue, the smoking cessation program, I included that because I knew that eventually we were moving to a place where employees were going to be discounted for not non-tobacco use. And so in order to do that, if you want someone to quit smoking, you have to give them some sort of program. So we did include that. If you want to add the real appeal weight loss, so what this does is you get $150 if you fill out an online assessment, and then you can get up to $738 a year in little incentives and gift cards. Remember, Joint Water's the claims payer now, so if you choose to have that real appeal weight loss program, you're paying that $738. What's wonderful about this, though, is that you're only going to pay it for the employees that participate. So if I don't sign up, you're not paying for me. If this person signs up, you're paying for them. So on this particular plan, it is a pay-as-you-go. This real appeal weight loss program is currently on the fully funded plan you have now. It's just embedded. When the Affordable Care Act passed, remember 80% had to be, 80 cents on every dollar has to be spent on wellness or claims. This is how they spent some of that 80 cents, is adding these embedded programs. But in a self-funded, you'd pay for it separately. So just so you know, the Quit for Life and the real appeal are currently in place, and we do not have anyone that is participating. Although we had 5 people sign up for the real appeal weight loss program, no one actually completed an assessment. So we don't have a lot of participation, and I know in the open enrollment meetings materials were given on that. So we haven't had any takers, but maybe we will in the future. That is an optional benefit. The EAP program is approximately $285 a month total. It depends on how many people we have. We have 123 employees now. If we went to 133 employees, it would be probably more like $300 a month. So that's not a very expensive benefit. In the enhanced behavioral solutions, that is 92 cents per employee. And again, it's not per dependent, it's per employee. So it's 100 times 123. And that is really if you see someone that's taking maybe a lot of medication or seeking certain services, there are alerts at the United Healthcare claims system that can say this person might be in crisis, and one of their people would then contact that person and talk to them. And it's really just a virtual program. It doesn't say, we will send you to this place and make you better. It offers you many, many resources that are all online and you have to read. So it's not exactly making the horse drink, it's just leading it to water. So that is something that can be added as well. And if you did add the terminal liability protection and the other programs to make the plan as it is now, you can see what that admin fee would, it's not really an admin fee, but adding the admin plus those benefits, what that cost would look like. So instead of $126.70, if you had the terminal liability and everything else on the 100,000 ISL, it's $187, $203.96 for the 75,000, and $226 for the 50,000. If the intent is to keep the plan same as and the employees see no difference, I would probably add them all of the optional benefits. You can always take them away or add to them in the future, but if you want the plan to look like it did before, you would add them. But it is totally optional. I wanted you to have that. Any questions on this page? Okay. All right. And the next page. Okay, now we're getting into what the numbers look like. Proposed option 1, 2, and 3. Option 1 is the $100,000 individual stop loss. Option 2 is the $75,000 individual stop loss. And option 3 is the $50,000 optional stop loss. You can see the same administrative fee across the top at $126.70. The contract right now is a 12 and 12. That means any claims received in 12 months will be paid during that 12 months. And the total, let's see, individual stop loss in red and highlighted is $240.44 for the $100,000. So what is, once you pay $100,000 on an employee, after that, United Healthcare is going to pick up the cost thereafter. What is the cost for that going to be? $240.44 per employee. And then the reinsurance for that aggregate stop loss, which is based on $1 million, based on $1 million, that cost is $27.35. So that total is going to be $394.49. Then if you multiply that times the 123 employees, that's the 48,522. If you annualize it times 12 months, it's 582,000 or 582,268. The proposed expected claims. So the insurance company looks at your past claims and what they see on the books in the short-term future or long-term future and says, what is the amount we expect to pay for claims for them? The amount for this next year would be $851.89 per person or per employee per month. Now, what is the maximum they expect if things go poorly? Instead of $851, which is what they expect, it could be as high as $1,064. So if they take those numbers and multiply those out, you end up with your annual aggregate attachment point, which is $1,571,735. Okay, so if you take your annual fixed cost, which is the cost of insurance and administration, is $582,268. And you add the worst case scenario of how much you're going to have to spend before the insurance pays the next million is $1,571,735. You end up with an annual maximum liability of $2,154,004. To the right on proposed 2, you see your worst case is $2.201,185, and on the $50,000 to the far right is $2,286,211. So when you're asking yourself, what is the worst case scenario? What might it cost us? That is your bottom line number. The premium, flipping back to the first slide from last year, was $2.274 million. So that gives you an idea that when you're comparing the $100,000, if things go as they expect, you're looking at a savings. You're looking at a savings across on everything but the $50,000. The $50,000 is just so easy. If you're only paying the first $50,000 on claims, then your risk is much lower, so your reward is much lower. Any questions on that? And I'm sure there are plenty. All right, let's flip over to the next page. This is the proposed renewal. So because the claims would not be considered mature, and because they're not going to have paid 12 months of full claims, it's going to be less than that, they expect, because I asked, what is the renewal going to look like? The last thing I want to do is have a conversation today about some low number and then they give us a high number next year. I want to tell you everything that's bad about it ahead of time. We'll talk about the good at the end. And so you're looking at a 25 to 30% increase on that $240.44, assuming the $1 million. And so you could look at $101,000 more in cost for insurance, just the insurance piece next year is the approximate amount you could be looking at as an increase, which we call that at Joint Water and Sewer a good year. We've had $300,000, $400,000 increases. So $100,000 sounds like a lot, but in reality, that's probably on a fully funded looking at maybe a 2% increase. So it's not as high as you would see. And we're not in a negotiating point on the second year, but the third year, now we have some time behind us and we can start looking at some of these numbers. Right now, they hold many of those cards because we don't know what it'll look like. So that's just the renewal piece. And now, what I would ask, other than questions, is what do you want to see and how do you want to see it so it would make it easier to understand or make a decision?
Could you go over all of it one more time?
It's a lot for us all to drink at one time.
Yes, sir, and I have 15 pages of notes that I was told not to go over any of them because it was way, way, way down.
She
in
went
the
over it
weeds.
twice with me yesterday, and I'm still not sure what all of it's talking about, so.
That's the suit he wore yesterday.
Yes,
just so
yes,
you
I
know.
haven't been home.
You haven't been home yet, huh?
I think it's a good introduction. Has your finance staff really looked at this?
Yes, they've been involved with all of our discussions.
So tell me this, in prior commissions, there was zero appetite for self-funding because it cost too much and the reserves weren't there. It's a new day and a much better day. The potential for risk is high, but the reward is also high, and we are never going to get a fully insured company to come to us and say, we didn't spend all your money. Have some of it back. We could look at performance funding, which means if we have a really good claims year, they're going to give us some of that money back. That's sort of meeting in the middle, but it doesn't work like self-funded. You lose the flexibility, and it's really just more of a, hey, well, that's nice. It's a little extra something. I think the 5 years on the claims that Mr. Mayor suggested would be very helpful to you. And since I've gone over it all and none of you hopefully feel that I'm shorting any information, I will take out everything that's not completely necessary and make a much smaller chart that might make a little more sense. I felt I needed to show it all to you so it was transparent, but now maybe I can shorten that a bit.
This is kind of what I think we ought to do at this point. I think we ought to have the staff take a look at it and do a presentation of the staff recommendation on going to self-funding with how you would set it up and how you would manage it and cover all the bases. Because there's some, I think, that we're going to have to establish some things within the organization
Yes, sir.
to manage this, and we need to know what that cost is in terms of employees that you may have to add, or at least maybe employee time that you're going to have to devote to it, and give us a look at it from the organizational standpoint, and then come back next month, and we'll talk about it again. When do we have to make a decision?
Well,
Soon.
Said by the end of the month, right?
it would be ideal for the end of the month, because if we wait for the next HR committee meeting and then the full vote, we would have right at 30 days to implement everything, meet with the
Or can
employees.
we do it in August? I mean, can we
Yes.
slip the July date?
We could, except the wonderful part of July 1st is it matched your
I know.
fiscal year, so it was just a perfect situation. I am happy to come attend a called meeting or a work session.
Well, this is what I'm looking at, is that we're trying to do this stuff with the coronavirus, and we really haven't factored, my understanding is that we don't have any cases within the organization. And we haven't factored, what that's gonna do to the medical industry. And we need some advice as how to best duck that. Because I think you're right about the claims year. And how's it gonna affect this? I mean, let's assume that maybe we have one or two people that get the virus and have a difficult time. You know, what's that gonna do to our claims? I don't even know, you know, what happens in that situation.
Well, the insurance company, if the claims were so outrageous, there's always a possibility that we, the government, could give them an additional paycheck and offset it. But as it stands right now, the insurance companies are just going to add it to trend and everyone will just pay more. So what we could do, Mr. Commissioner, though, is we could ask United Healthcare for a short year. We could say we go to this August 1st and we renew July 1st. So we stay on the fiscal year, which is amazing for accounting, and still move forward.
Yeah, but they're brilliant back there. They'll manage.
No, sir, you cannot fight a fiscal year. Unfortunately, it just won't fight you back. It always wins. It's like the IRS. So that is something that we could do if it takes a little longer.
Well, the one thing about the fiscal year with this, it's kind of a rolling cost anyway, so it's not that big of a deal if it's off the
Okay.
fiscal year.
If I may, it's really not a big deal to not have it tied to the fiscal year.
I take it all back.
We do our budgeting in February and March, so we're projecting what the next fiscal year is going to be anyway.
Okay.
So making that adjustment is not any real onerous task on us. We have other contracts that run over the span the fiscal year cutoff, so it's our liability and property coverage as well.
Okay. So that would be making a decision by June 1st, which hopefully in that period of time, 6 weeks, we would know a little more than we know now. But thank you for recognizing the staff time, because it is going to be another job, and it is going to be an additional job for Teamwork Services as well. So there is more administration that goes along with that.
Okay, I'm the one that's talked to Commissioner.
Well, sir, I would like to say, if we go to be self-funded, it's gonna really put us in control of safety of our employees, because safety is gonna be paramount, even more so, because it affects the bottom line. The company is gonna be pushing it harder, just as well as getting the employees ingrained in it too, as well, because it affects the bottom line, so to speak. The incentive that we can put in there would be great, because, you know, most employees, a lot of frontline employees work on incentives. They have something to shoot for. So, but safety is gonna be paramount. You're gonna have to gin up your safety committees and put more teeth in your safety. I think it'd be a little bit more priority on protocols about how people how they effectively do their work. It's nothing that we can't do. What I'm saying is it'll be better for the organization. The organization will be in more control. If we have a bad year with claims, years down the way may offset that, just like a bad crop when farmers plant. It comes in bad, it comes in good. So that's one of the reasons why I want the 5 years to see exactly where we are, because I think it will ease out. I think, and also if we decide later on, you said something about United Healthcare had this plan where if it's over a certain period of time, let's say 90 days or whatever, they will pay them fines or whatever.
Yes, sir. So if you purchase the additional terminal protection
We don't have
rider,
that now?
you don't need it now because they're paying all the claims.
Okay. Well, how far over the extended period would they pay? In other words, if a claim, let's say a person got sick in March, and all of a sudden the claim didn't come in until August sometime, would they pay it?
If you renew every year with them, they'll pay it, but only if you leave them will they only pay for the 12 months. So that's only if you cancel the contract.
But the actual procedure happened in March.
I
and
know.
It didn't get
I know.
processed until.
I know. So on the self-funded side, If you don't have this additional rider that costs something, then they only have to pay based on when they got the bill, not when the procedure happened, like fully funded. But you can put that in, it's just an additional cost. I could have just added it all in, but I wanted you to see how that breakdown was. But, Mr. Mayor, once you pay for it once, it's like that for the duration. So let's say 3 years from now, you cancel, that was a question. 3 years from now, you cancel the plan with United and get away from self-funding or go to someone else, then you still have that additional 90 days. You pay for it once.
Okay.
And it lasts for the duration of the
That might be
policy.
something good, okay.
Yes, if there's any possibility that you might ever leave them, it's good to pay one time. You'll make up the savings for what you'll spend on it. It's just worth that extra 90 days.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
I'm good. I understood everything perfectly.
Oh, thank you so much.
I am counting on that, on that email.
Yes, sir, you'll have it. One other thing I wanted to add is, these will be my rough calculations, because when I asked the insurance company to do all this modeling, they said, no, no, no. So all of this is just mine. So I'll just approximate, but I can use the claims that we had and plug them into the numbers.
Approximate.
But let me ask your opinion on something. To simplify, is the thought that 50,000 individual stop loss or 100,000 is a little more attractive?
I'm for 100 because I looked at the, it's only 132,000 more for the 100,000 with all the benefits that you are proposing. So 132,000 from 100,000 to 50,000, the difference to me it outweighs that.
We had 12 employees or 12 people go over $100,000 in 2019. So that gives you an idea of how much more you would have spent. So in 2018, the claims were terrible. They were way, way above that. But when you're looking at that top sheet, you can see how many were actually over that amount. And I was looking at the 100,000 as well. Even though you could possibly save more money with the 50,000, you could end up spending more on just what you're paying for the plan, the insurance, the reinsurance as well. So it's kind of close. So in the modeling, do you want to see the 50,000, 75, and 100?
Is that on the 5-year thing you're gonna give us?
Yes, sir.
I think it'd be good to have.
Okay. All right, so we'll do all three. Okay, that's great.
And, you know, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. If we
Yes.
get started with self-funding and we have a couple of good claim years, then we'll get a reserve build up and we can handle a bad year. If we
Yes.
get started and we have a bad year, then it's gonna take a good number of years to overcome it.
Well, to the mayor's point, if you had a couple of good years and you had a reserve there, you could potentially, as Ms. Tyndall brought up earlier, reduce what the employees are paying on their insurance, so they would actually feel like they had some control over what they're paying on insurance. Where it is now, we know we're not getting a reduction.
Right.
And 99 times out of 100, it's going up regardless of what our claims are.
But I think if we go into this, we're playing the long game, not
are.
a short game.
Yes,
Yes, and
absolutely.
we would not even shop this in the first 2 years at all. Well, first of all, a self-insurance carrier, you can see there's not a ton of money to be made, and they just don't, they want to know where you've been and how long you've been there. So we would want it to be at least 3 years to take a look and see how it ran. And to the mayor's point again, as you bring the employees in and you start saying, okay, how much we spend and where we spend, and here's this tool to say, you can search how much your surgery is here or how much your surgery is there, or maybe you don't get the MRI here, maybe you get it there. As you put them more in control and you realize that there's either a rebate or a reduction at the end of it, it does change the culture. Putting money back in their pockets is the only thing that changes the culture. It's the only thing you're gonna impact me on. So,
One of the things in the modeling, can we take the prior years and normalize the number of people that were in it, so that it equates to what we currently have, which is 121?
123, yes, I'll only use the 123.
Yeah, but we have to kind of figure out some way to take the claims of those people that were in that number, and we don't want to totally we want to have a randomness of the claims.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's called a Monte Carlo simulation. Are you familiar with that? That we want to try to pull together. And I think what we want to do is look at a broader span of about 10 years, with the first 5 years being the prior years, and the next 5 years being a Monte Carlo simulation, using this data to project or think about what it may look like the next 5 years.
I don't know that we can go back the full 10, but I'll go
No,
back.
I think what he's saying is you only go back 5, but you project forward 5.
Oh, okay, okay, yes, okay, I see. Okay.
And these extraordinary claims in 2018, were they really extraordinary as far as rare, or is it, you know, and I guess our 5-year would tell us if these type of claims are more common or not, but
In a fully funded contract, the insurance companies do not want to give you very much information. So all those years we were with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they would give us paid premium versus claims paid out, and maybe some large claim diagnosis. So they might tell us that there was a certain type of cancer or a heart disease, but that would be as general. They didn't break it down like United Healthcare has. So I don't know that we'll be able to see what those are, but we may just have to use that modeling to try to come up with some sort of a sum that makes sense of an
It'll give us good
average.
information.
Yes, sir.
I know in 18, we had at least 2 cancers ongoing, and we also had an open heart surgery that had to occur on a somewhat emergency basis
Well,
during that
you know,
year.
what you might want to do is you want to have some of the outliers in, but you want to factor that, you know, something so that, you know, we don't have all the outliers in our projections.
And the other thing to keep in mind when you're looking at this first chart is this is only going to show you those that were over a certain amount. If I had an $8,000 surgery or a $28,000 claim, it's not even going to show up on this list. So there are lots of other claims that could have been associated with that total. Those are just the large claims. It could have been very different. And again, the insurance companies don't want to give you that information and legally don't have to, so they band together to not give it to you, because if you peeked behind the curtain, you might actually find out that they're sitting on a pile of your money.
Imagine that.
We have another thing to talk about. Go ahead.
The last thing I want to say is, I think anytime you have an opportunity to have some self-control or self-direction in something, it's better, because insurance companies just seems like they're a necessary evil in the world. And there's a big disparity between, you know, people go to the doctor and they don't realize the doctor's billing $300, but the insurance is only intending to pay $110 of that. And so there's kind of a disconnect with the insurance companies. But, and I know Senator Sanders probably was very correct. It's really a crisis in this country. And people that are insured don't understand that as much as employers do. That we really, you know, the insurance companies are there to make money, and they're going to make their money. So if we have some measure of self-control here, I think it's going to be beneficial for the organization in the long run.
Did you have anything?
That was a real good presentation. I apologize.
No, sir, thank you so much. You probably didn't miss anything, and I'm going to send out an email to try to simplify. And when I do, my contact information will be there. Call me with anything that you want to talk about specifically or anything that will help make the decision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have one more thing. We have one more item.
There are no handouts for this
I
presentation.
didn't want you to get too far ahead of me. All right, how do I get this thing to show up? Okay. All right. So we've been talking about this a few times. I've listed 4 options here. There's actually a 5th option, which we'll go over at the end. But we could maintain our existing pension format. We could grandfather all of our existing employees into the current plan and move the new employees to a defined contribution plan with GMA. Currently, GMA is the one that administers our program. We could grandfather all the employees that are currently vested in the existing plan and move everybody that's not vested. And then we could also On those second two options, we could make changes and then contribute additional money to lower the unfunded portion down quicker. So our existing format, we contribute 6% of covered payroll to the pension annually. So 6% plus whatever you have to pay to the amortization of the unfunded liability. Currently, the amortization amount is $207,000 a year on top of the 6% of payroll. So these numbers are assuming that $207,000 continues on for another 14 and a half years, which is what the amortization schedule is. And I ran some projections based off of what a 2% salary increase every year at the existing staffing level, just to give us some numbers, and did some projections there. And you see those numbers continue to go up quite a bit. And then they'll drop back down a little bit in the interim, but that's because we theoretically would get the unfunded portion paid off. But then as salaries increase into the future, those numbers continue to go up. This is the easiest thing to do because we don't have to do anything. It would require no changes on our part. Administratively, it's very simple. However, it is the most expensive option we got, and we would be unlikely to be able to contribute additional funds to pay off that unfunded any quicker. If we grandfathered all the existing employees in, there's 151 active participants in the pension program at this point, and then moved new employees starting July 1 to the defined contribution portion with GMA, we would contribute 6% for the existing employees and 3% for the new employees after July 1. The new employees would also contribute 3% of their pay to make up that gap. Now, we would still be responsible for paying off the unfunded portion at that $207,000 a year. But we also would recommend the Tier 2 have a 10-year vesting schedule. Right now, our vesting schedule is very aggressive. We begin vesting in 3 years, and we're fully vested at 5 years. And we'll talk about that in a minute as far as the percentage of our employees which make different year requirements with us. So this would certainly boost morale to the existing staff because there's a lot of concern with staff now about what's going to happen with the pension program. It does lower our cost. However, if somebody joined us yesterday, which we haven't had any new hires in about 6 weeks because of this whole coronavirus thing, we would be paying for that employee potentially 30 more years because that's when he would be capped out in the pension. It's unlikely that somebody would make it 30 years, but there is a potential you'd be paying for these Tier 1 employees for 30 more years. And it doesn't save the maximum amount of money that we could be looking at. But you see there's quite a drop-off there, and I'll have a summary graph to kind of show this moving forward, but you will start seeing a reduction almost immediately doing this way. If we grandfathered the vested folks in and moved everyone that wasn't vested to the new plan, again with the 6% for the Tier 1 and the 3% 10-year vesting for Tier 2, there's 103 staff members that are currently vested in the pension program. So that leaves us 48 people that are not currently vested. So those 48 people in this scenario would be shifted to the 3% plan, and their vesting schedule would be changed from the 3 to 5 to the 10%. This of the options presented maximizing our cost savings with GMA because you're moving those 48 people. However, the number of people we have vested is about 65%, so there's not as much of a reduction off of it as what you might expect just because there's not as many people that would be moved to the new plan that are current employees. So here's the annual cost on these options. Now, the 2020, this kind of shows you this is what we paid last year to kind of give you a reference point. The current plan, you can see it goes up much higher than the other two plans, but if you notice the difference between the move just new and move all the non-vested, you're talking a very small amount of money difference for those 48 employees. In 2030, you're talking about $16,000. In 2040, you're talking about $4,000. And the reason that is because only 20% of our staff members actually make it 10 years. So if you move everybody to the if you move all the non-vested to the new plan, the overwhelming majority of those individuals will never get vested. There will be about 20%, so you're talking about really impacting 12 people if we went that way, because the other 36 that went away, or sorry, that was bad math, the other 10, 40 versus 10, the other 40 that went away, they would not be vested in the program. They probably would not be vested in the 5-year program by the time we got there anyway, because we tend to have a lot of immediate turnover just because people get into the business and decide this is not what they want to do. Now, we could add more to the unfunded liability with either of the options to change presented. Currently, we've got a $1.9 million liability. It's amortized at 14.48 years, which is $206,000 a year on top of our required long-term payments of the 6%. We could potentially take the savings options. We're going to see immediate savings if we went to either of the new plans and still take a savings off of what we would be paying with the existing plan, 5% a year, and make that gap up on the unfunded quicker. So as an example, in year 5, the current plan is projected to cost us $730,000. 95% of that's $700,000. The projected for the option 2 that was presented is $600,000. So you'd be adding an additional $100,000 to the unfunded. So it's kind of like paying extra on your mortgage. Instead of paying it off in 14.5 years, you pay it off in closer to 8 years. So that would allow those savings with that unfunded portion going down to be realized more quickly. Now, that unfunded is assuming a 7.5% rate of return for GMA, which they have hit for 3 or 4 years in a row. I don't believe they'll probably hit it this year with everything that is going on, but over the long haul, they have been able to hit that fairly consistently. But if we didn't get that, if it was closer to a 5% or so, all of these numbers would be adjusted proportionately, because regardless of what the unfunded ends up paying off, if we don't get the 7.5%, that amortization is either going to go longer or they're going to charge us more to get there, and it will be impacted the same on all of the plans.
Andrew, what percent funded are we now?
76%?
76%.
Something in that ballpark.
We're low.
Well, 76% funded on everything. If you look, there's multiple ways to look at it. If you look at it on what do they call it? A current ongoing basis. Yeah. Yeah, on an ongoing basis, we're 97% funded. So essentially, if we continue making our payments, we will be funded, assuming that we continue making the payments. If we stopped all the vested payments now and everything, we're about 76% funded. So that depends on which way you want to look at that. Now, Commissioner Neal, at the last meeting, you had asked what happens if we basically freeze our existing pension and move everybody to like a 401k type plan. You'd still, now for these numbers, the assumption would be that we would still contribute 3% and take 3% from the employees on a 401k auto draft as a match. So if that were occurred, the thing that would really happen would be on this plan here where we grandfather the vested, those other 103 employees would have, the 3% for those employees would not be included in that, spent every year. So that would save you an additional $243,000 a year. You would still have to pay off the unfunded portion of the existing pension program. So you're still going to be paying that same $207,000 for the next 14.5 years if you stopped it today. But you would save the 3%.
I had understood that you'd have to pay the unfunded balance immediately.
That's not what I was told, but it's possible that be, I mean, the unfunded balance is 1.9. If we had to do that, we could take that out of reserves. I wouldn't recommend taking that out of reserves and setting up a healthcare reserve all in the same year, but it could be done.
I have tried to get educated on pensions outside of our county staff and JWSC staff, just trying to get an unbiased education on it, to your credit and to the county's credit. The reports we got back were pretty much in line with what had been presented. So that was refreshing to hear. But
now, one thing, if we froze and went to the 401k style, that eliminates the vesting portion of this, and once that money goes to that person's 401k, they've got it. So like I was saying before, only 20% of our people make it 10 years. So 80% of the money that you would be paying out if you went to the 401k instead of going to a 10-year vesting period would be leaving for people that weren't ever going to retire from here. So you basically be knowing you're paying too much because people aren't going to be there. So that's $191,000 a year if you assume that 20%. $190,000 a year that you're paying that would be leaving every year for people that would be leaving the organization.
Well, also, you don't incentivize them to remain with the organization.
So just on the vesting, currently, like I said, we began vesting in 3 years. 51% of the people we hire make it 3 years. So 1 out of every 2 that comes in the door is going to be at least partially vested in the current plan. They get fully vested in 5, 36% make it 5 years, but again, only 20% make it 10 years. So with the recommendation to move grandfather existing and move the new employees to the defined contribution program through GMA, one thing that would happen is there will be those 48 employees that are not vested right now. A portion of them will become vested within the next 5 years because they would be fully vested in the existing plan under the current rules in 5 years. So let's assume 4 years would be the cap on that because we have very few people that have been here less than a year. Those in 4 years, everybody will be vested in the current plan that's still here. If you went to a 10-year schedule for the new employees, that would give you a 6-year window where no one is vesting. No one new is vesting in the program because it would be a 10-year cliff where you would have to be here for 10 years to be vested. So all that money that you're putting in there would be actually helping to pay off the unfunded quicker because it's not going to pay off vested liabilities.
Well, do we have a staggered vesting in that, or is it?
But the recommendation would be a 10-year cliff, not staggered. So you would be paying 3% instead of 6% on the new employees, and from statistics, 80% of them aren't going to make it to vesting, so that money would still be there to pay off the unfunded portion for other people, and now you wouldn't get the full benefit. They'd still take their 3% back when they left, but absolutely would leave 3% in there to pay off the unfunded for folks that didn't stay. And it would actually, for the calculation of the pension, for the benefits, the calculation would stay the exact same. So GMA would have the same calculation. The only difference would be who's paying what percentage. We'd pay 3, the employees would pay 3. And that, from administratively, would make things the simplest. And I believe, talking to Mr. Donaghy, what we think makes the most sense is to us continue to pay the pension amount like we are now. And for the new employees, that deduction out of their check would go back to the JWSC instead of have Teamwork Services paid separately to the pension and us pay separately to the pension. Essentially, we pay the full amount and be reimbursed by the 3% deduction out of the new employee's paycheck each month.
What is our turnover rate?
We lose about 15% a year.
You know, I think that would be a pass-through, but I don't know whether, is that legally you can do that? Even though it's a pass-through? In other words, you taking money out of a person's account, paying back to the organization, and basically the organization is paying for them?
Essentially, yes, sir.
We would be paying, we would have to check on the particulars once the format was approved. But
I just want to know, is it legal, can you legally do that?
we would already, the Joint Water and Sewer Commission would prepay GMA for those contributions and then
Right.
We will check into the legality of that. If it is legal, that's the simplest way for us to do it. If it's not, then we would have to have Teamwork Services take the 3% out of them and then pay that to GMA every month, and we would make our separate payments every month to GMA.
Right.
Either way,
You're right, it's a pass. I understand what it is, but just,
yeah, absolutely.
can you take out a person's money and pay the organization
Right.
for that?
I thought,
For a pension?
no, okay, I'm a little confused. The 3% that the employee contributes,
Right.
he keeps if he leaves the organization, correct?
That's correct.
We're not talking about that.
And the only thing that he doesn't get is the 3% that we matched him with.
Right.
So that should be, I mean, they need to check and make sure, because I don't want to
Yeah.
make a mistake like that, but
Okay.
I think we're okay.
No, well, what I was talking about
I missed it.
is,
I think there's some confusion about how the remittances to the
that's what I was talking about, how to pay it off.
Oh.
versus who keeps sharing money.
Right, what I was talking about is, what we were saying, well, we were gonna pay, JWSC were gonna pay the 6%, and the employee would pay, even though they pay 30%, the 3%, we're gonna give them back the three, in other words, the 3% that the employee pay, we pay it to us instead of paying to the pension.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's all the same, but the legalities of can you actually have employee
Blow that money
Yeah.
that way.
Right.
Yeah.
We need-
for a pension to
We
pay?
we could certainly confirm that. And when the employee got his, if he left before 10 years and got his 3% back, that would come directly from GMA. So we would not be contributing that money back to the employee. That'd be coming from the GMA retirement system.
Right.
What we're talking about, it works much as Social Security works. The Joint Water and Sewer Commission makes one transfer to the federal government for Social Security, but half of that's withheld from the employees. So we are effectively paying the employee's portion and then having it withheld from the employee. The contributions, and then any benefits for Social Security is determined by the Social Security Administration. It would essentially work the same way for pension. We contribute the whole amount to GMA, and that would be administered by them when an employee left. But we would be offsetting our 6% contribution by the 3% withheld from.
Okay, all right, I see your point.
Yours is just an accounting function.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
okay,
Right.
But pensions are a little different, so,
yeah,
into legality, that's.
right, yeah,
Certainly.
sure.
And Andrew, I don't want to speak for someone else, but I know one of the concerns that Commissioner Stevens has is looking at total compensation.
Right.
What this pension, total benefits, how JWSC employees rank against non-governmental type jobs in total compensation. Have we made any headway in looking at the recommendation and how that fits in with salary and benefit?
We haven't ran those numbers. It depends on how you, the difficulty is valuing the pension benefit, because you could say that the employee is getting a 6% benefit every year on top of their normal salary, because they're not having to pay any of that, or 3% in this case. They're not having to pay any of that, so it'd essentially be a 3% bump in salaries if we did that. But no, we haven't looked at that in entirety yet. We were just trying to make the decision on the pension, because if we want to make changes effective July 1, we're going to need to do that pretty quickly, because it's going to take some time to run the paperwork.
Well, it's going to reduce the total compensation of new employees.
Yes, it will reduce the total compensation of new employees at least 3%, because they will be having that coming out of their check. For the existing employees, theirs would stay the same, but we would start making progress towards that goal immediately. We hire, again, 15 to 20 people a year coming into the organization, so you would see an immediate turnover in that.
I'm interested to know how our employee package
Sure.
measures against the private sector in our location, not nationwide, but regionally here. I think it's important, and I think it's something that we have to look at now. And I agree with Commissioner Stevens on that aspect of it.
Now, we did look at straight salaries, not benefits, at some other governmental agencies around here in this general area, and we were in line to us. I mean, there were some lower, there were some higher, depending on where you're at. Certainly, larger cities are going to pay more typically than smaller cities will, and also authorities, maybe like Jekyll Island, may pay more for some staff members than we pay, stuff like that. So based off the numbers we're getting back now, we did not look at their benefits package. Based off of what we were told by consultants, you're looking at benefits package being between 38 and 42% of compensation across the board, just as a standard rule, and we are at 41%.
But again, I'm also
Sure.
interested in the private sector aspect of that. If these guys left us and went into a construction industry.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm
An operator of, backhoe operator,
Interesting prospect.
what could he make in private market?
Well, I think you're gonna have a hard time coming up with the numbers that relate
And
to
I'm not
what
saying
people
necessarily
do.
that we've got to wait on those numbers to make this recommendation. I just
Oh, you
think,
don't
it's-
think we have to wait for that?
I don't think we have to wait
Oh,
for
okay.
that, no.
I mean-
I think we,
You may
yeah,
have in construction a backhoe worker, but our people have to run a backhoe and have to do a bunch of stuff,
Well-
plus they have to be licensed.
Well, if you know somebody that can run a backhoe that's looking for a job, we need some people that can run equipment, so certainly would be open to interviewing them. Yes, we're having problems finding people that want to work for us that already know how to run equipment, so certainly if you know anybody, send them our way.
Andrew, that, it says grandfather existing. So that's, if they're not even vested? They're still
Yes, sir,
grandfathered.
because those 48, like we
And-
said.
and It's on a 3 and 5 year deal, right? It's not changing anything to a 10-year period.
Except for the new employees. The existing employees would stay on the existing vesting schedule, whether they're vested currently or not.
in the first slides that you put up, can you give us not today, but can you send me a side-by-side of those options? I know you did it on the graph, but I'd like to be able to see the dollar amount, so.
Sure.
And I know the consolidated graph was pretty good, but if you could do a spread and put those three together before you got to that one.
Sir, I could certainly do that for you. I just didn't want to do you with death by numbers
Yes.
in here, so.
I would appreciate that, but, you know,
Well, I guess at this point, what are we gonna recommend to the full commission?
Which one does, how much would that one save that you recommended?
The existing one, now, you would save 3% on new employees immediately, which would be about $160,000 first, because you still have some that would be on the existing plan. So you'd save about $130,000 initially by doing this. Now, that gap continues to increase as more people go on to the new plan.
and you're reasonably solid on your, second two, moving the new and moving the non-vested. Those numbers are very, very close.
Yes, sir, those numbers are close, again, because a lot of the non-vested people aren't ever going to get vested, just because of our turnover rate. That's why those numbers end up that way, because, you know, somebody comes off the plan, and then the 3% after they've been here for 5 years on the new staff member, and maybe gotten a couple of raises through there, they'd be going back at a lower rate, and so it churns that way. Where, in the long run, by doing it with the 10-year vesting with the new, based off the projections I ran, you get to a point where you don't really see a tremendous increase in the amount of vested people each year, because so few of our people make it 10 years versus the ones that are able to retire every year. So you don't really see a tremendous increase in vesting over the long haul, because you may only have 1 or 2 people vest a year, and you may have 1 or 2 people retire.
What would that save us?
With the 10-year, that would be what we're talking about here. It would save us the $160,000 right now and continue to increase. And then the 3% or so, let's say $240,000 would be 3% total for 10 years is $2.4 million. And then 80% of those people would not be vested. So $1.76 million would stay in there. The balance would come out, versus right now, half of those employees are going to get vested into the plan. So probably save us over a 5 to 10 year window, a little over $1 million.
Right now, we have 3-year, they're eligible, and then 5-year, they're fully vested, is that correct?
3 years, they're a third, 4, 2/3, 5 fully.
10-year, it'd be what? When would they start being eligible?
They would not be, it would be 0% from years 1 to 9 and 100% at 10.
Okay, so there's nothing like 5 and 10.
I agree with that.
I think you might see more people shooting for the 10-year if you change the vesting to
Well,
10 years.
I will say, I have worked in other places with 10-year vesting schedules, and what you see is when people get to 8 years, they really want to hang on for 2 more years.
Right, yeah.
Because they got to get to 10, but if they're in the 5 to 6 year range, it seems like it's too
Right.
far away for them, so they'll make that move.
You got to make the decision early on.
Got to make the
or else-
decision early, or you
else
feel like
hanging
you're
there,
stuck.
Right, yeah.
Andrew, would you move to your recommendation,
Yes, sir.
please? And I'd go ahead, and make a recommendation to,
Excuse me, sir, before you make a recommendation, I just got a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Before we get to it. Andrew, are we saying that, I think really the employees want to know, basically, are they going to be paying this 3%? Is 3% going to be coming out of their pay? According to this last plan here, you're saying that only 3% will come out of the new employees.
That's correct.
money. So, in other words, everybody else will be staying just like right now, they're not paying anything.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Do they have to participate, the new employees?
Yes, sir, it would be mandatory, because if not, that unfunded portion would continue to grow.
No, the 3% for the IRA, do they have to participate in that, though?
With GMA, they would, yes, sir. It's mandatory. If you went to a 401K, they would not, but with GMA, it's mandatory.
And what you're saying that we are comfortable with only the new employees coming in paying the 3%. In other words, we were going to continue on the way we are going, and only those new employees, which you predict, as in how many people per year?
15 to 20 per year.
Okay. So, and they would be the ones who help start paying for.
That's correct.
And also, we're looking at a savings by virtue of moving our vested plan up further away, so we won't have to pay so much coming out.
That's
And
correct.
That's the saving we're trying to save on that end versus having people pay the 3% up front.
Yes, sir. There would be a minimum of 5 years. If somebody started yesterday, or starts, say, June 30th, and we do this July 1, there will be a minimum of a 5-year period where no one gets vested because of the change in plans.
And the vested part is really us paying people, I guess, to pay them out over a period of time for being
Right.
vested, I guess. So that's the saving that we're looking at that way versus the savings of having everybody pay 3%. Only the new people pay 3%. So we attacking it from the back end instead of the front end, basically, I guess, in a sense. I understand.
I think it's attacking
Well,
both.
both ends, yeah, in a sense, yeah, I see. But the fact that all our other employees who are
We're hired under the program, stays under.
stay on the program, yeah. Okay, I'm fine.
And it would be attacking it from both ends to a certain extent, like you're saying, but for those employees that are currently with us, knowing they've got the Tier 1 plan, that would really incentivize them to stay.
Right.
As much as possible, because if they went somewhere else, they likely would not be able to transfer that pension, given what everybody else is
They
doing
lose
now.
that, you're right, you're right.
And we have a very, in my opinion, very qualified staff that if we could retain the majority of them, would really benefit us. So I think this would provide an additional incentive for those staff members to
Well, I think
stay with
so
us.
too. I don't think the employees that we have currently are not paying into the pension plan anyhow, and we are paying them to work for us and work well for us too as well, so
Yes.
they're not paying per se the 3%, so.
And within a 5-year period, approximately half of our employees
Right.
will be on the new plan
Right.
Right,
within 5 years.
yes.
And the people that are closer to retirement typically are at a higher salary point than the new employees that would be coming in. So there would be that reduction as well. If we replace somebody that's making $20 an hour with somebody making $15 an hour, 3% of that is less money. So it would,
Right, right.
it has that effect as well.
People you've hired since you've been here, have they come mainly because of our pension plan or because of, do they even care about it?
Certainly, I think people care about it. We've had of people I've directly hired, we've had one who moved into town because his spouse moved into town, and he was looking at other options where he could have been paid more than what we offered him from a salary perspective, and in some cases significantly more. But the pension program was very attractive to him. I think, now I say this as someone who is relatively young, I think if you're coming in at 40 plus, that pension is a very attractive option for you. If you're getting hired in for the distribution crew at 19 years old, you probably don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about your pension program.
I have one question. The actuarial assumption is a 7.5%
That's correct.
return. I assume that's averaged over a period of how many years? Is it 5?
Well, they make adjustments to it periodically. 2 years ago, they adjusted it downward from 7.75 to 7.5, so they look at that annually, and I would suspect it would be a 5 to 10 year average that they're looking at. Yes, sir.
Because the pension that I was involved in before, I was the chairman of the pension board, and we did a smoothing method over a period of 5 years because of the ups and obvious downs in the market. So it makes it easier to swallow the 7.5%.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I was told by the consultants that we talked to that 7.5%, the county uses that too, by the way, but that's not a realistic number.
Not at all.
That
It's
3.5
not,
to
yeah.
4 is more, but our experience at the county side of it has been that over a long period of time. So,
Oh, yeah.
So it's the smoothing effect that you're
Right.
talking about, and again, it's a gamble. It's a gamble. So
I would say that regardless of what you did with the pension program, you're still going to have that same gamble. If you went to everyone with a 401k, what would the main difference would be all the risk would be on the employee and none of it would be on JWSC.
Okay, you want to make a recommendation?
yes, sir. I'd like to recommend that we forward to the full JWSC commission the recommendation presented by staff to grandfather the existing employees, move all new employees to a defined contribution plan, and make those changes effective July 1, 2020.
I second that.
You second?
All right.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. Motion
So we
passed.
will need to amend our agenda for tomorrow because that was not on there because I wasn't sure what conversations we would be having today. But I'll make sure we have a written note for somebody to amend that as soon as the meeting starts.
Okay. Is that okay?
Can you send an email out to all of the commissioners for this?
Yes. Be happy to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have any other business?
Lunch.
Lunch.
The Human Resources meeting is adjourned.